All right, good morning, folks. I got audio? Sounds like I do. Okay, so let's go ahead and get things started, all right? We have a rather busy day with a lot of good presentations for you. This is the OpenDaylight Mini Summit, so if that's not what you were expecting, you're in the wrong room. So we're going to start off with a presentation kind of giving an intro to what the community is like, some of our processes. So those that have been around for a while, maybe you'll learn a little bit of the nuances. Those that are new will probably learn a lot. That was kind of the intent of this first kickoff session. And then we'll move into a variety of other sessions, most of them relatively deep in nature from a technical standpoint. All right. So OpenDaylight. We are a project that is a platform for doing software-defined networking, as well as facilitating network function virtualization. OpenDaylight is unique because it actually uses a microservices architecture to allow for the inclusion of a variety of different southbound protocols, as well as the creation of a large number of services that fit on top of those. The fundamental architecture of OpenDaylight is one where we have a northbound API set. You can write your applications as external applications that are interacting with OpenDaylight through REST. We've also, as well as RESTconf, netconf, and with the Beryllium release, we've added a project called Messaging for Transport that in Beryllium is supporting AMQP. In addition, Beryllium also added a new GUI development kit that can be used with applications that are interacting with OpenDaylight. This diagram not only shows the fundamental architecture, but also the new things that are in Beryllium. The things that are in the tan and highlighted in black are new to Beryllium. But in general, you've got a series of services. You've got the model-driven service abstraction layer has two key components, one being a data store for configuration data as well as operational data, and then basically a simple messaging bus so that the different services and protocols can interact with one another, and then a variety of southbound protocols that ultimately talk to our network elements. Again, for the Beryllium release, we had some new components, Sentinel, which is a streaming data handler, actually sits on top of another project called Time Series Data Repository, or TSDR. Controller Shield is a set of tools to actually help you understand what your security vulnerabilities are from either northbound, east-west traffic, or southbound. Again, Messaging for Transport is what has given us AMQP. The NetIDE project is one that actually allows for other controllers to call upon OpenDaylight to act as their SDN controller. So it's a way of actually allowing for some level of portability across the different open SDN controllers that are out there. Let's see. The Uni Manager, I've got folks in here for the Uni Manager. This is something that's actually being done in coordination with the MEF, with Metro Ethernet Forum, and is providing, actually I can't remember what it is providing. Should have brushed up on what all these projects were. Is David Carr in here? No. Yeah, my apologies for not remembering what that is. Fabric as a Service, as well as Nemo. Nemo is another one of our intent-based projects for doing intent-based abstractions between the northbound applications and the SDN controller. And we also added OpenFlow config, or OF config, for doing configuration of OpenFlow devices. We use terminology in OpenDaylight that's pretty specific for our purposes. We talk about projects, and projects are groups of people coming together to work on things, is really the best way to think about it. There are 56 projects in OpenDaylight right now. Again, we work as a modular platform, so these 56 projects are not meant to be all put together as one massive controller. But the idea is to be able to actually pick and choose what features you want for what you're trying to accomplish from a software-defined networking and a network programmability standpoint. All right, so when people want to work together on some technology component that makes sense as an addition to OpenDaylight, they will organize into a project and they will come forward to the community and propose that project. Projects in general will create features. All right. At our second release, we realized that we needed to be flexible in how folks could actually bring together these different technology components in OpenDaylight. Our first release, we actually tried to bundle them into certain categories, but we realized very quickly that with the number of projects we were going to have and the very diverse use cases that were going to be, OpenDaylight was going to be used by, we needed to create more flexibility and more modularity for users in how they brought those features together from those different projects. So projects generate features. Features are ultimately what users will install. This is a graphic that shows the different projects and their dependencies on one another. Our release process has the concept of offsets. In general, an offset 0 project is dependent upon by everybody. An offset 1 project is dependent upon offset 0 projects, but has other projects dependent on it, which are offset 2 projects. And then offset 2 projects don't have any dependencies typically from anybody else or any other projects within OpenDaylight. We do this so that we can stage our release process so that as features are both first verbalized during the early parts of the release process. Again, the offset 1 or offset 0 and offset 1 can say what they're going to provide, and then based on what they provide, offset 2 projects may choose to add or not add a feature because it would be dependent on something that would be new in an offset 0 or 1 project. So that way we can keep everybody informed, the dependencies in line, and throughout the release process have things ready for things that are going to be depended upon later in the cycle. Again, this graphic I recognize is rather small. The red boxes are our offset 0 projects, the yellow or orange or gold is the offset 1 projects, and the green is offset 2. This is a diagram of our project life cycle. So it's actually relatively easy to become a project in OpenDaylight. You will do that by becoming an incubation project, and it's really a matter of providing a proposal on a wiki, identifying what it is you want to do and who's going to be helping you to do this work, then submitting a mail to the project proposals mailing list, waiting for 2 weeks, so that the technical steering committee can review it, and then requesting a creation review by the technical steering committee. That's the fundamental process. Again, as long as you are doing something that isn't going to clearly break everybody else, and you have identified folks that are going to work on this project, by and large, you are accepted. And then, of course, you can't have any IP encumbrances on your code to be able to contribute anything that you are going to bring forward. That's an incubation project. Once a project has been around for a while, shows that it's stable, it's got good process behavior, has good testing and so forth, it becomes mature. We have just a handful of mature projects right now. Again, we're a relatively new project. We've been around, we're just about to hit our 3-year mark, and projects are just now turning to mature. Again, they've been around for a while. They've identified that they indeed have people that are committed and will continue to be committed, as well as they've gone through the process and they've done well with the process and they've done the testing required to become mature. A core project would be one that is really dependent upon by lots of different projects inside of OpenDaylight, and obviously it has become mature first. We don't have any core projects yet because, again, we've just now started to get projects into the mature state. And then once a project actually is so large, it actually has sub-projects within itself, it would become a top-level project. Projects that have become dormant and inactive, over time we will ultimately archive them so that we can set them aside. This is our release review, or release overview rather. Again, we're walking down the periodic table. Hydrogen, helium, lithium, beryllium was just released about a month ago, and we're just kicking off the release cycle for boron now. In addition to major releases, we also do stability releases or dot releases for each of these versions. This is the way it looks over time, what we've done from hydrogen through beryllium to this point. You'll notice that at first with hydrogen, we didn't have any stability releases. Starting with helium, we started a regular schedule. And the idea in this schedule is that generally we do stable releases about every 6 weeks to 3 months for the entire next cycle or through that entire next development cycle. And then we will overlap the last stability release of a version after we've done the kickoff or the actual release of its subsequent version. So you'll notice, for example, that helium overlaps lithium. Again, lithium is in red, helium is in gold. And then we've just had an overlap with lithium as we kicked off beryllium. That way we have an overlap of supported versions throughout our development cycle. Currently, again, we've just provisionally approved our boron release plan, and it's got a release date set for September 8th. Release schedule is there, and again, these slides will be posted after this. We have a series of milestones in our release process, M1 through M5. I'll go in more detail them in just a minute. And then 3 release candidates, and then ultimately the release. I talked about offsets before on how we do our dependencies. In general, during the release, the offsets will lag somewhere between 2 and 4 weeks from their previous offset. Milestones in general, we do an M0 to kind of kick the release off. We do an M1 that says, yes, I want to join the release, and here's a rough draft of my release plan for the things I'm going to be providing. At M2, and so that should start the conversation between projects that are going to have inter-project dependencies. At M2, we have a finalized release plan. M3 is a functionality freeze, so we're trying to really close down that code base for what others can be depending upon for you. API freeze is at M4, so that's at the point where all of the different APIs that you would be providing for everybody are locked down, and those aren't going to change. M5 is code freeze and string freeze, so nothing but bug fixes from that point forward. Again, we have a series of 3 release candidates and then ultimately a release. From a feature standpoint, we talk about, again, we use a tool called Apache Carafe to bundle these different components together. You can have as many features as you want, whatever the right logical grouping is for your code. Ultimately, you'll have some top-level features. So these are a fewer number of features that kind of aggregate all the features that you define in how you want to coordinate your different deliverables. And then there are user-facing features, so these are the things we would expect somebody to actually install. So that's a logical grouping of features or top-level features that, again, we expose and document to our users. A variety of test requirements, unit test, integration test, which is really testing and allowing for all downstream dependencies to be testing against your check-ins to make sure what you're doing isn't breaking anybody, and then full system level test as well. We'll talk more about at least some varieties of our testing in the next session. And then documentation requirements, user, developer, contributor, installation, do a series of how-to guides or tutorials, as well as release notes. All right, and with that, I'm going to hand this over to Ann Ho, our release manager, to talk about the community. Ann?
Thanks, Phil, for the introduction. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Ann Ho. I'm the release manager for OpenDaylight. Can I get a show of hands of how many people here are new to OpenDaylight? Okay, so we got, oh wow, we got a few. So everybody else is an expert. You guys can go to sleep now. One of the key driving force behind the phenomenal success of OpenDaylight is its active, amazing community. That's what makes it stand out from all the other SDN controllers and NFV out there. We have user groups around the entire world. This diagram right here just kind of shows you we're almost on every continent. We have community labs spanning from Linux Foundation to Ericsson, Huawei, Spirit, and we also have an active advisory group who meet every third Thursday to kind of give direction to the TSC, our Technical Steering Committee, on service provider and enterprise use cases, architectures, etc. So we have this amazing set of resources, feedback from end users, feedback from the community, driving the phenomenal success of OpenDaylight. In addition, we also use end user surveys. We collect feedback from our end users, from the community. And we find that OpenDaylight is most popular in North America at 33%, and then in Asia at 30%, Europe 19%. And then we got some use in South America and Africa. The top countries is USA, China, and Japan. And users are using OpenDaylight in many different environments. You got service providers, you got enterprises, you got research and education, and also ecosystem vendors as well. And it's covering many different types of use cases, including NFV and cloud, traffic engineering, network monitoring, management and analytics, and new service creation. So this is based on a survey that we collect from the community. OpenDaylight has a very large community of developers. We've had at least 637 contributors and maybe more contributing code since the beginning of OpenDaylight, writing over 2 million lines of code here. Just within the past 12 months, we've had around 400 contributors adding code, adding 12,000 commits. OpenDaylight is mostly written in Java. That's what our code base is in. But we also have some C code, some C++ code, and other types of code. And all of this code is maintained by a very large development team. OpenDaylight also has active deployments around the world. And it's being used by telcos, by enterprises, by research and academic institutions. This map here just shows a collection of a few, spanning from KT Corporation to China Mobile to Comcast, AT&T. There's just too many, including universities like Cornell University. So this is just an example of where OpenDaylight is actually being deployed and used in the industry and in academia. Previously, I had mentioned about the use cases for OpenDaylight. And when we say use cases, this is based on actual real deployments of OpenDaylight, either implemented or tested in a production lab or POC environment. And it covers automated service delivery, cloud and NFV, network resource optimization, visibility and control. So we're covering many different active use cases, and you can find more information by following the link at the very bottom to see if maybe one of these use cases apply to your company or your particular institution as well. OpenDaylight also has a very active ecosystem creating applications as well as their own third-party distributions or third-party controllers based on OpenDaylight. These are just some of the companies that are already doing that, and you can find more information. There's a slide later that will link back to some of the deployments that you can use. Distributions that you can use. The next section I want to cover are resources for really new users, new developers, and anybody who wants to propose a new project in OpenDaylight. So it's kind of hard to read, so these slides will be posted later this week. And so then you can follow the link from the PowerPoint presentation. But so for OpenDaylight, we've got tons of resources for new users. We have several guides, including a getting started guide, an installation guide, as well as a user guide and release notes for new users to start using OpenDaylight. And as you're using OpenDaylight, if you have questions, we got many different channels for you to communicate back to the community. We got IRC channels that you can communicate live with our developers. We got a fantastic Ask forum where you can post your questions, and we got developers responding on that forum. We also have mailing lists threads that you can follow as well as ask questions. We also got some great tutorials for end users. Video tutorials on YouTube if you prefer watching a video tutorial. We also posted a couple of free presentations on the OpenDaylight website for you to review. And there's also some training sessions that the Linux Foundation offers at the link here. As I mentioned earlier, we got various different types of deployments. Now, you can use the OpenDaylight distribution artifacts from the download page in OpenDaylight, or you can go to the integration distribution page and find links to existing images, packages for different deployment environments. We also got third-party distributions from various companies who have packaged OpenDaylight. So those are some of the deployments, some of the distributions that you can use as new users. Now, if you're looking to become a new contributor, a developer, we also provide guides, developer guides, and project guides on a per project basis. We also have links to the API, and right now we have them for ODL Parent, Yang Tools, and MD Sound. We're looking to add more of that in the coming weeks. If you're looking to become a new contributor, the best way is to hop on to some of the live meetings that we have for various projects in OpenDaylight. Take a look. If you're excited and you're ready to start doing work, we got some Trello board where you can take a look at some of the open tasks that you can start contributing to, or open bugs that you can start fixing. So there's so many opportunities for new contributors, and we also provide a contributor guide to introduce users on how to follow through with the development process, like using Git, using Gerrit, Jenkins, etc., and how to submit patches to fix bugs, etc. For new projects, you'd have to go through a project proposal process that Phil had mentioned earlier, there's a review that you would do at our TSC meeting, and so for any new projects out there, feel free to reach out to Phil or myself or anyone in the community. We can help you put together a new project proposal. So now I'm going to pass it back to Phil, who will be talking more about things that are happening in OpenDaylight for ONS.
Thanks, Ann. So yeah, we just wanted to touch upon what's going on at ONS this week with regard to OpenDaylight. Obviously, we have our summit today with a lot of really good sessions. I think you'll enjoy them, so please stick around. Tuesday's pretty action-packed. We've got our executive director, Neela Jacques, talking at 9:25 with other open source projects around SDN and NFV. At 2:40, we've got a presentation on SD-WAN. At 10:30, we've got another plenary with a variety of projects, OpenDaylight, OPNFV, ONOS, and P4. At 3:05, Colin Dixon, the chair of the Technical Steering Committee, will be doing a whirlwind tour of the projects that make up OpenDaylight as it stands now in Beryllium. At 4:10, I'm speaking tomorrow actually on, in particular, open source as a software practitioner. For those that are new to open source or haven't been around it for very long, it'll be a session really just talking about best practices for how you work with the open source community and why they're best practices. What are the benefits that you get out of those? And then at 5, we have Jan Medved talking about the overall architecture of OpenDaylight. Very good session, I'm sure, particularly if you're interested in adding any services or southbound protocols to OpenDaylight. Wednesday, we've got ONOS and OpenDaylight, somebody who's kind of been between both of those projects, talking about both of them and how they're continuing to grow. More on testing and scale. That'll be done by Marcus Williams, who's also actually presenting in the next session with us right here. Thursday, we have a session on the model-driven SAO and writing an application for that. And then a presentation on OpenDaylight and artificial intelligence and machine learning. And then one again at 3:15 on Thursday for OpenDaylight and telcos. Again, these slides should be posted, I believe, by the end of day tomorrow, so you can pull those down to be able to use this material. And with that, Ann and I want to say thank you. Welcome again to the OpenDaylight Mini Summit. And we're going to hand it now over to Luis Gomez and Marcus Williams to talk about some of the testing that we've been doing lately. All right, thank you very much.